I want you to imagine, just for a moment, looking at a single resume.
Okay.
And on this resume, under the professional experience section, you read these bullet points.
Let's hear them.
Invented the commercial antivirus industry, wrote software for NASA, ran a yoga and meditation retreat.
Wow, quite the pivot.
Right, but it keeps going. Posted extensively on internet drug forums about manufacturing synthetic bath salts.
Naturally.
Fled a murder investigation by burying himself in the sand with a cardboard box over his head. Ran for president of the United States twice.
It sounds completely made up.
I know. And then, casually, under personal details, this applicant claims to have 47 genetic children.
I mean, it literally reads like a cyberpunk thriller that an editor would reject for being way too heavy-handed.
Exactly.
Because when you look at a list like that, your brain immediately wants to categorize the person, you know?
Yeah, we want a neat box.
Right. We are desperate for a clean binary. You're either a visionary hero or you're a chaotic villain. A genius or a madman.
But this specific life completely refuses to fit into any of those little boxes.
Oh, absolutely not.
Which is exactly why we are here. So in today's deep dive into our provided source materials and biographical notes, our mission is to trace this wildly contradictory, chaotic, and undeniable brilliance of John David McAfee.
It is quite the journey.
It really is. We are going to map his evolution from a tech pioneer, someone who essentially built the digital walls that you and I hide behind every single day, into a paranoid international fugitive.
And we aren't just going to walk through a basic timeline here.
No, definitely not.
What becomes incredibly fascinating as we unpack these documents is how his entire life acts as a mirror for the absolute wildest extremes of the internet age itself.
And that reflection connects directly to you, the listener. Because, we all use software.
Right. We all have that little shield icon hovering in the corner of our screens.
Yeah, we implicitly rely on these unseen systems to protect our digital lives, our bank accounts, our private conversations.
But the man who pioneered this entire concept, the very person who figured out how to monetize the idea of digital safety, lived a life that was fundamentally defined by an inescapable, all-consuming fear.
Paranoia wasn't just his business model.
No, it was his baseline reality.
Right.
So understanding this story isn't just about examining a true crime saga, It is a masterclass in the psychology of the early tech boom, the capitalization of public anxiety, and really the extreme danger of combining unimaginable wealth with unchecked psychological trauma.
And to really understand that, we need a framing device. As we were going through the sources, a very specific theme kept jumping out at us.
Infection.
Exactly. Infection. Whether it's a computer virus infecting a mainframe, or a chemical infecting the brain, or even paranoia infecting an entire culture.
Yeah.
So let's look at where that first infection started. Because you do not end up hiding from a foreign police force in a literal sandbox without some very deep foundational cracks in your architecture.
No, you definitely don't.
So let's look at his early life. The notes tell us he was born on September 18th, 1945, on a United States Army base in Cinderford, Gloucestershire, in the UK.
Right, to an American father and a British mother.
Yeah, and then he was primarily raised in Salem, Virginia.
Though, the geographic location is far less critical than the emotional landscape of his childhood home.
Because it was bad.
It was. The biographical documents paint a profoundly grim picture of his upbringing. His father is described by a BBC columnist as an abusive alcoholic.
But it's the specific nature of that abuse that is so critical to his later development, right?
Exactly. He recounted spending his entire childhood living in constant agonizing fear. He described a home life where a violent beating from his father could happen at any given moment.
Like completely devoid of warning or provocation.
Yes, there was no logic to it. You couldn't predict it.
Man, I am just trying to wrap my head around what that does to a developing brain.
It completely rewires it.
If your earliest, most formative experiences are defined by random, unpredictable violence in the one place you're supposed to be safe, wouldn't you naturally gravitate toward a life philosophy focused entirely on building impenetrable defenses?
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like building a house directly on a fault line.
From a psychological and neurological standpoint, that is exactly what happens. When a child experiences that kind of unpredictable trauma, the nervous system adapts by entering a permanent state of hypervigilance.
Just always on alert.
Right. The brain is flooded with cortisol. It's constantly scanning the horizon for the next hidden threat. You never get to rest.
You're always waiting for the system to break down.
Always. And tragically, this childhood trauma culminated in the most extreme systemic breakdown imaginable.
Yeah.
When he was just 15 years old, his father killed himself with a gun.
Okay, I need to pause right here, because this is where the sources already start blurring the lines of reality.
Yeah, the myth-making starts early.
It really does. There is a 2022 documentary mentioned in our notes. It's titled Running with the Devil, The Wild World of John McAfee.
Right.
And that documentary brings up this wild allegation that he might have actually shot and killed his father himself and then staged the scene to look like a suicide.
That allegation does exist in the source material, yes. And while it remains an unproven claim, the fact that it floats around his legacy really sets the tone for everything we're going to discuss today.
It's like you can't trust anything entirely.
Exactly. Everything about his life is shrouded in this dense, impenetrable fog of myth, trauma, and disputed facts.
But what is absolutely indisputable is that the sudden, violent end to his primary source of terror didn't just magically heal his hypervigilance.
No, not at all. It simply left him with a massive emotional void and an intense burning need to control his environment.
And we see that need for control manifest almost immediately, don't we? But it's always paired with this total disregard for conventional boundaries.
Right. The rules don't apply to him.
So he goes to Roanoke College, gets a bachelor's degree in mathematics in 1967. Which, math makes perfect sense to me here.
Why is that?
It is the ultimate system of pure, controllable logic. It doesn't randomly attack you. It has rules.
That's a great point. It's safe.
Right. But then he goes for his doctorate in mathematics at Northeast Louisiana State College, and around 1968, he gets expelled.
And why was he expelled?
Because he was having a relationship with an 18-year-old undergraduate student.
A student who eventually became his first wife, Fran.
Yeah.
But you are hitting on the core pattern of his entire life right there. He masters the rules of the system, in this case, complex mathematics and academia, but he simultaneously decides those rules do not apply to him personally.
He demands structure from the world, but refuses to be bound by it himself.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this trajectory, because it is wild. He's expelled, but he is undeniably brilliant.
Very brilliant.
So where does a brilliant, boundary-pushing mathematician go in the late 1960s? He goes to NASA.
Of course he does.
From 1968 to 1970, he's employed as a programmer at NASA. I want you to picture the reality of that environment. This is the Apollo era.
Oh, yeah.
It is arguably the most highly regimented, mathematically precise, tightly controlled bureaucratic environment on planet Earth at that time. We are talking about literal rocket science.
It is the ultimate juxtaposition. You have a young man whose internal world was shaped by a chaotic, violently unpredictable home life, now operating within the most rigid structure imaginable.
It must have been quite the shift.
Well, at NASA in the late 60s, computing wasn't about a personal laptop. It was massive mainframes, punch cards, rigorous protocols, and zero room for error. He is learning how the largest systems function.
And he didn't stop there.
No. After NASA, his resume reads like a historical directory of the early computing revolution. He goes to UNIVAC as a software designer, then he moves to Xerox, working as an operating system architect.
Wow.
By 1978, he's at Computer Sciences Corporation, and then he spends the early 80s as a consultant for Booz Allen Hamilton.
Wait, I have a theory about this.
Let's hear it.
Is it possible that his early trajectory through these massive defense and tech contractors was less about a pure love for programming and more about finding the most powerful systems in the world and proving to himself that he could completely control them?
That makes a lot of sense.
Like, if you can master the systems at Lockheed or NASA, you prove that you are finally safe. You are the one in charge.
I think that is an incredibly astute way to look at it. He was actively learning the architecture of the digital world as it was being built from the ground up.
He was seeing the foundation.
Exactly. He was seeing how data moved, but more importantly, he was seeing the vulnerabilities. He was learning where the walls were thin.
And this brings us to the moment where the internal paranoia perfectly aligns with an external threat.
Yes, 1986.
It is 1986. He's working for Lockheed. And he reads an article about something called the brain computer virus.
The brain virus. Our notes explicitly state that when he read about it, he found it terrifying.
But I want to dig into the why and the how here.
Mm-hmm.
Because for context, Brain is widely considered the first computer virus for the MS-DOS operating system.
Right.
Why would a seasoned programmer who worked on Apollo-era mainframes be terrified by a piece of code created by two brothers in Pakistan?
Well, to understand the terror, we have to understand the mechanism. Because before the internet was widely accessible, viruses spread physically.
Right, sneakernet.
Exactly. The brain virus hid itself in the boot sector of a floppy disk.
Wait, explain the boot sector for us.
Yeah, so the boot sector is the very first part of the disk the computer reads when it turns on. It essentially tells the hardware how to operate.
Okay.
So if you put an infected floppy disk into your computer, before your operating system even fully loaded, the virus would execute.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it would hide itself in the computer's memory and then infect any subsequent floppy disk you inserted.
So it's invisible.
Yeah.
And it's sneaky.
Exactly. It operates underneath the user's awareness. For most people, it was an annoyance.
But for McAfee.
For a man whose entire psychological framework was built on hypervigilance and the fear of invisible, unpredictable forces invading a safe space, a computer virus is the digital manifestation of his childhood trauma.
That is so dark.
It is a violation of control. A piece of code is entering your machine and altering your reality without your consent.
But unlike his childhood, this time, he actually had the tools to fight back.
He did.
He saw the threat, but he also sensed a monumental business opportunity. He decided to create software that could automatically detect this invisible enemy.
Right?
So in 1987, he creates McAfee Associates, Inc., and he names his flagship product VirusScan.
And we really need to emphasize the technical brilliance of what he built here.
How so?
How do you find an invisible enemy? He utilized a method called signature-based detection.
Okay.
He would analyze a virus, find a unique string of its code, its digital fingerprint, essentially, and then write a program that would rapidly scan every file on a computer looking for that exact fingerprint.
Oh, that's smart.
If it found a match, it quarantined or deleted it. This is the absolute foundation of the commercial antivirus industry.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me, and it fundamentally changes how I view the software industry. The strategy he used to build his empire.
Yes.
The sources note that initially, his primary goal wasn't actually to get a massive user base of paying customers.
No, it wasn't.
He gave it away. He distributed it via early internet bulletin boards. His actual goal was to raise awareness of the sheer existential need to be protected.
He was the pioneer of fear-based marketing and technology.
That's such a heavy phrase, fear-based marketing.
It is, but it's accurate. He recognized a crucial hurdle. You cannot sell a cure to a public that does not yet realize they are infected, or worse, doesn't even know what an infection is.
Right.
He had to educate the public, but that education was heavily laced with pure anxiety. He went to the media and painted apocalyptic scenarios of what these digital pathogens could do to precious corporate data or personal files.
He didn't just monetize software, he monetized paranoia.
And it worked on a scale that is hard to overstate.
I have to push back on his legacy a bit here, though.
Okay.
Did he actually solve a profound problem? Or did he just invent the modern anxiety-driven tech industry?
That's a very good question.
I want you, the listener, to pause and think about your own bank statements. How many monthly subscriptions do you currently pay for based entirely on the fear of what might happen if you don't have them?
So many.
Identity theft monitoring, encrypted cloud backups, VPNs, premium password managers. He essentially laid the blueprint for all of that.
Huh.
He was patient zero for the digital anxiety economy.
That is a harsh but fair assessment. He created the demand by highlighting the fear and then supplied the relief.
And the financial trajectory reflects the genius of that model.
Oh, absolutely.
By 1990, just 3 years after starting, he was personally making $5 million a year.
Incredible.
McAfee Associates was incorporated in Delaware in 1992 and had its initial public offering that same year. It was a massive success.
But he was fundamentally a builder, not a maintainer.
Right, he got bored.
Very bored. The day-to-day operations of a publicly traded corporation just held no interest for him. In August 1993, he steps down as CEO, handing it over to Bill Larson, and stays on briefly as Chief Technical Officer.
But that didn't last long either.
No. By 1994, he sells his remaining stake in the company completely. He cashes out.
And he didn't just quietly walk away to enjoy his millions. He actively turned on his own creation.
He really did.
In later years, he became the company's most vocal and vicious critic. He urged consumers to actively uninstall the software. He called it bloatware.
The irony embedded in this era of his life is staggering.
It really is.
In a 2012 article published in the Mensa Bulletin, he openly admitted that creating the first commercial antivirus program had inadvertently made him the single most popular hacking target in the world.
Wow, I never thought of that.
He noted that hackers viewed compromising his personal systems as the ultimate badge of honor.
Like taking down the king.
Exactly. So you would logically assume that the godfather of cybersecurity had his personal devices locked down with the most robust, premium version of his own software, right?
Nope. He told reporters, quote, "I take it off. It's too annoying."
It's hilarious. He abandoned the automated digital defense system he sold to the public in favor of living like a digital ghost.
How so?
He resorted to extreme behavioral paranoia instead of software. He wouldn't buy his own computer equipment. He had other people buy it for him to break the paper trail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He used pseudonyms to set up his logins. He changed his IP address several times a day to ensure he couldn't be geographically pinned down by a digital trace.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
But we really need to talk about how he expressed his disdain for his old company, because it perfectly illustrates his complete and total detachment from anything resembling normal corporate behavior.
Oh, the video.
Yes, the video. In June 2013, long after he had left, he uploads a video to his personal YouTube channel. The title is very straightforward: How to Uninstall McAfee Antivirus.
It is less of a tutorial and more of a piece of chaotic performance art.
Totally.
In the video, he is violently critiquing the software, complaining about how deep it burrows into a computer's registry and how difficult it is to remove.
But the setting is what makes it so bizarre.
Yes, he is delivering this critique while being surrounded by scantily clad women, casually firing handguns, and openly snorting white powder off the table.
It was pure provocation, and it received 10 million views.
He told Reuters he did it to ridicule the media's negative coverage of him, basically leaning into the cartoonish villain persona they were painting.
I mean, the official spokesperson for McAfee Inc., the actual multi-billion-dollar company he founded, was forced to put out a deeply uncomfortable statement calling the video ludicrous.
I can only imagine that PR nightmare.
And it didn't stop there. When Intel eventually bought the company and announced in 2014 that they were rebranding the products as Intel Security to distance themselves from his antics, he openly celebrated.
He was thrilled.
He said he was everlastingly grateful to Intel for freeing him from this terrible association with the worst software on the planet.
So let's look at where we are. By 1994, he has conquered the digital world, he has cemented his legacy in the history of computing, and he has a fortune that will eventually peak at around $100 million.
That's a lot of money.
It is. He is a brilliant, hyper-vigilant man who has just been handed unlimited resources and zero daily responsibilities. The structure that he both hated and needed is just gone.
Which ushers in a completely erratic chapter. It's almost like a retired superhero trying to find a hobby, but instead of taking up woodworking, they start building dangerous experimental contraptions in their backyard to feel alive.
That's a great analogy.
He has all this money and all this frantic mental energy. So what does he do? In 1994, he founds a company called Tribal Voice, which develops a program called Powwow.
Which is significant because Powwow was actually one of the very first instant messaging chat programs on the internet.
Wow, really?
Yeah, he was still tinkering with the underlying fabric of digital communication. He also joins the board of Zone Labs in 2000, who made firewall software before they were acquired by Check Point.
So he's still in the tech space.
He is, but he is desperately seeking something physical, something outside of a computer screen to quiet his mind.
And that search leads him to Colorado. In 2000, he buys a massive property and opens a yoga and meditation retreat.
Another huge pivot.
But he doesn't just casually practice yoga on the weekends. He leans all the way into the identity. The following year, he authors 4 distinct books on the subject.
And if you look closely at the titles of these books, they are incredibly revealing when placed against the backdrop of his lifelong paranoia.
What were the titles?
We are talking about titles like The Secret of the Yamas, Spiritual Guide to Yoga, Into the Heart of Truth, Beyond the Cities, Supernatural Powers, and the Sutras of Patanjali, and perhaps the most telling of all, The Fabric of Self, Meditations on Vanity and Love.
You read those titles, and it sounds like a man who is desperately trying to dismantle his own ego. He's looking for spiritual enlightenment, a way to permanently quiet the noise and the fear in his own head. He wants peace.
But the psychological whiplash here is that simultaneously, while writing about the dissolution of the ego and finding inner peace, he's chasing pure, unadulterated physical adrenaline.
At the exact same time.
During this exact same era, the 2000s, he starts investing heavily in and publicly advertising the sport of ultralight flying. He even coins a new term for it, aerotrekking.
Let's explain aerotrekking for the listener,
Yeah.
because it is inherently terrifying.
It really is.
It involves flying these tiny motorized tricycles with glider wings attached, often referred to as trikes. But the key to aerotrekking is flying them extremely low to the ground.
Right. Weaving through canyons and over the desert floor at high speeds.
It leaves zero margin for error. It is the exact opposite of the digital safety and security he sold in the 80s. He is intentionally putting his physical body in immense danger.
It is a classic manifestation of trauma response.
How so?
When the baseline of your brain is set to high alert, normal, quiet life feels unbearable. You have to create external chaos to match the internal chaos just to feel normal.
That makes a tragic sort of sense.
But that pursuit of physical risk catches up with him in a tragic way. He is named as a defendant in a 2008 civil court case.
What happened?
The lawsuit stems from an aerotrekking accident that resulted in the death of a passenger and the pilot. And the pilot happened to be his own nephew, Joel Bitto.
Oh, man.
That kind of profound tragedy, combined with the stress of legal liability, begins to severely fracture the serene yogic facade he was trying to maintain in Colorado.
And then the ultimate destabilizing event happens. The 2008 global financial crisis.
Right.
According to a report by the New York Times in August 2009, the crash absolutely decimated his investments. The notes indicate we are talking about a personal fortune that plummeted from a peak of $100 million down to just $4 million.
We really need to explore the mechanism of that loss and what it means to a mind like his.
Yeah, let's unpack that.
The 2008 crash was driven by the collapse of mortgage-backed securities. It was a massive, unseen systemic failure.
Right.
Losing 96% of your net worth is a trauma that would deeply shake anyone. But for a man whose entire psychological framework was built on maintaining absolute control and building defenses against unpredictable threats, this financial collapse was a catastrophic system failure.
His wealth was his armor.
Exactly. It was his primary shield against a world he believed was inherently hostile. With that shield shattered by forces completely outside his control, the baseline paranoia he had harbored since childhood came rushing back in full force.
Now, rationally, most people would look at $4 million and think, okay, I have taken a massive hit, but I can still live a very comfortable, quiet, upper-middle-class life.
Sure.
But rationality left the building a long time ago. $4 million is still a fortune, provided you take it somewhere with a significantly lower cost of living, and more importantly for him, a place with far less regulatory oversight and law enforcement reach.
Which leads us directly to the jungle.
Belize.
Yes. In 2009, he relocates to Belize. He buys beachfront property on the island of Ambergris Caye, and later, more property near a mainland village called Carmelita.
And almost immediately, his physical environment begins to reflect his internal state. He surrounds himself with a large group of heavily armed security guards.
This is such a profound, terrifying shift in the narrative.
It really is.
The paranoia that used to exist purely unseen digital viruses has now metastasized into the physical world.
He is no longer just worried about hackers stealing his data.
No, he is building a literal physical fortress with armed mercenaries to protect his physical body.
And yet he is still desperately trying to project the image of the eccentric, benevolent tech visionary.
Right.
In 2009, he is interviewed in Belize for a CNBC special called The Bubble Decade. The documentary highlights the stark, almost sad contrast of his life.
How did they frame it?
Well, it reports on all the lavish mansions he had built or invested in across the United States that were now sitting unsold or foreclosed due to the recession. And they juxtapose that with his bizarre new life in the jungle. He talks to the cameras about his new quest to raise plants on his land for possible medicinal uses.
Which leads to his next major corporate venture and another fascinating twist on our theme of infection.
Okay, what was the venture?
In February 2010, he teams up with a microbiologist named Alison Edenizio to start a company called Quorumex, headquartered right there in his Belize compound.
And what did Quorumex do?
The stated goal of this company was to produce herbal antibiotics that disrupt something called quorum sensing in bacteria.
Quorum sensing.
Okay, it is a brilliant, albeit flawed, pivot. To understand what he was trying to do, we have to explain quorum sensing.
Let's do it.
Bacteria do not just blindly attack a host, they excrete chemical signals called autoinducers. When the concentration of these signals reaches a certain threshold, a quorum, the bacteria realize they have enough numbers to overwhelm the host's immune system.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, and then they coordinate their attack or build a protective biofilm. It is essentially bacterial telepathy.
So McAfee looks at this biological process through the lens of a computer hacker.
Exactly. Instead of trying to kill the bacteria directly with traditional antibiotics, which leads to resistance, he wanted to hack their communication network.
That's wild.
He wanted to use compounds derived from jungle plants to jam the signal so the bacteria would never realize they had a quorum and would never launch the attack. He was trying to write a biological antivirus program for the human body.
Wait, I need to stop you there.
Okay.
Because while he is publicly telling the world he is trying to cure bacterial infections with jungle plants, privately, he is diving headfirst into an entirely different, much darker kind of chemistry.
Oh, yes.
In December 2012, he admitted to a Wired reporter that between 2010 and 2011, he was highly active on a popular online drug discussion forum called Blue Light.
He was posting under the alias Stuffmonger.
Stuffmonger.
Yes. And the documents show that the archives reveal this Stuffmonger account made 220 detailed posts on that site.
That's a lot of posts.
It is. But he wasn't discussing herbal antibiotics or holistic health. He was deeply engaged in highly technical discussions about the manufacturing of, and his personal use of, a synthetic stimulant drug called MDPV.
Let's clarify what MDPV is for the listener, because the media usually calls it by a different name. Bath salts.
Right.
It is an incredibly potent, highly addictive synthetic stimulant. And another source article from 2016 notes he was also heavily importing a then-legal drug from China called alpha-PHP, which is chemically similar.
Yes.
I want to understand the mechanism here. What does this specific class of drugs do to the brain?
MDPV and alpha-PHP are what we call norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitors.
Mean what, exactly?
Simply put, they flood your brain with the chemicals responsible for reward and alertness, and they block the brain's ability to clear those chemicals away. The user stays awake for days on end.
That sounds dangerous.
Extremely, because the dark side of this massive chemical flood is that it induces severe acute paranoia, visual and auditory hallucinations, and highly erratic, often aggressive behavior.
Which is the last thing he needs.
Exactly. It physically forces the brain into a state of extreme hypervigilance far beyond anything natural.
So let's look at the horrifying convergence of factors we have right now.
It's a perfect storm.
You have a man with deep, untreated childhood trauma involving sudden violence. A man who recently lost 96% of his fortune. A man living in an isolated jungle compound surrounded by heavily armed local mercenaries.
Right.
And now he is literally hacking his own brain chemistry by manufacturing and consuming massive quantities of experimental synthetic stimulants known to induce psychotic paranoia.
It's terrifying.
And if you put all those ingredients into a blender, isn't a massive tragic explosion practically guaranteed? It's not a matter of if, but when the system fails.
The pressure cooker finally blew on April 30th, 2012. McAfee's property in Orange Walktown, Belize, was raided by the Gang Suppression Unit, the GSU of the Belize Police Department.
A heavily armed, militarized police raid on a paranoid man's heavily armed jungle compound.
According to the GSU press release at the time, he was arrested for unlicensed drug manufacturing and possession of an unlicensed weapon.
Did it stick?
Actually, no. He was ultimately released without charge. The Belize police spokesman, Rafael Martinez, confirmed later in 2012 that McAfee was neither convicted nor formally charged, merely suspected of these crimes.
But the damage to his psyche was absolutely irreversible, I'm sure.
Oh, completely.
The external world had finally validated his internal paranoia. He later claimed in 2014, while he was safely in Canada, that during this raid, the Belizean government seized his assets and that his house subsequently burned down under what he called suspicious circumstances.
He became entirely convinced that the state apparatus was out to destroy him.
And that profound mistrust sets the stage for the inciting incident that would turn the eccentric, drug-fueled millionaire into a genuine global fugitive.
Yes.
November 12, 2012. Belize police announced to the press that they are actively searching for John McAfee as a person of interest in a homicide investigation.
The victim was an American immigrant named Gregory Viant Fall.
And what happened to him?
He was found dead of a gunshot wound the day before at his home on Ambergris Kai. And Gregory Fall happened to be John McAfee's immediate neighbor, with whom he reportedly had a history of disputes, specifically regarding McAfee's aggressive guard dogs.
Now, McAfee's response to this police inquiry is incredibly telling.
Very.
In a contemporary interview with Wired magazine, he stated outright that he was completely terrified the police were going to murder him if they caught him. So he refused to answer their routine questions.
He completely evaded them.
I made a conscious, paranoid decision that cooperating with the local authorities was a guaranteed death sentence.
And his evasion tactics, I mean, they are something straight out of a Looney Tunes cartoon, but driven by absolute visceral terror.
What did he do?
Our sources state that to avoid the police who were searching his property, he buried himself in the sand on his beach for several hours, placing a cardboard box over his head so he could breathe without getting sand in his mouth.
Wait, really? A cardboard box?
Yeah. I want you to really think about the physical and psychological reality of that specific moment. Put yourself in that sandbox.
Okay.
The godfather of cybersecurity, a man who once commanded a $100 million empire and dined with CEOs, is lying in the dirt, covered in sand, breathing through a piece of trash, absolutely terrified that a government death squad is walking just feet away from him.
It is a staggering fall from grace.
Belize's prime minister at the time, Dean Burrow, publicly commented on the situation, calling McAfee extremely paranoid and even bonkers.
So he successfully evades the immediate search of his property, and he decides to flee Belize entirely. He crosses the border illegally into Guatemala, and this is where his ego clashes violently with his need for survival. While he is literally on the run from a murder investigation, he is actively trying to manage his public narrative.
He just couldn't help himself.
He contacts Chad Esley, an American cartoonist and animator, and asks him to set up a dedicated blog so McAfee can write about his experience as a fugitive in real time.
He simply cannot resist the spotlight, even when the spotlight is the single most dangerous thing for him.
It makes no sense.
His need to be seen as the smartest guy in the room, overriding his basic survival instincts, leads to what is arguably the most profound, darkly comedic irony in the entire history of technology.
So what happens? In December 2012, two journalists from Vice magazine are secretly traveling with him in Guatemala to get the exclusive story.
Right.
They take a photo with him to publish alongside their article, proving to the world that they are embedded with the famous fugitive John McAfee.
But the journalists made a catastrophic amateur mistake.
What did they do?
They uploaded the original image file directly to the internet without scrubbing the metadata, specifically the EXIF geolocation data attached to the photograph.
Oh, no. Let's break down the mechanics of this for the listener, because it's a vital lesson in digital privacy. What exactly is EXIF data?
Sure.
When you take a photo with a digital camera or a smartphone, the device doesn't just record the pixels. It embeds a hidden file header into the image that contains a wealth of information. The camera model, the lens aperture, the exact time and date.
And crucially, if your device's GPS is turned on, it records the exact longitudinal and latitudinal coordinates of where you were standing when the shutter clicked.
Wow.
So consider the staggering irony. The man who spent the entire 1980s teaching the corporate world how to protect their sensitive data from unseen threats, the man who proudly boasted to Mensa that he masked his IP address multiple times a day to remain untraceable to hackers, is brought down and completely doxxed by the most amateur basic digital footprint imaginable.
That is wild.
The internet instantly downloaded the photo, read the embedded GPS coordinates, and pinpointed his exact physical location to a specific resort in Guatemala.
It is the ultimate technological comeuppance. His digital ghost persona was shattered by a JPEG.
Completely.
He is immediately forced out of hiding and has to appear publicly in Guatemala City, where he desperately tries, and fails, to seek political asylum. On December 5, 2012, he is officially arrested for illegally entering Guatemala.
The walls are closing in.
The Asylum Review Board flatly denies his plea, and he is thrown into a detention center to await deportation straight back to Belize, the very place he firmly believes will execute him.
And this is where we see his sheer theatrical survival instincts kick in. The system has him trapped, so he manipulates the system.
Wow.
On December 6, major news outlets like Reuters and ABC News report a breaking story. John McAfee has suffered 2 minor heart attacks in the detention center and has been rushed to a Guatemalan hospital.
Did he actually have a heart attack?
Well, The narrative immediately fractures. His own lawyer contradicts the reports, saying it wasn't heart attacks, it was just high blood pressure and an anxiety attack.
Ah.
And later, McAfee himself openly admitted to the press that he faked the heart attacks entirely.
You were kidding me.
No, it was a calculated, cynical stall tactic. He needed to buy precious hours for his attorney to file a series of rapid-fire legal appeals to prevent his immediate deportation to Belize.
And did it work?
Incredibly, the ruse actually worked. The medical delay and the media circus hastened the Guatemalan government's decision to simply wash their hands of the massive headache.
So they didn't send him to Belize?
Nope. Instead of sending him to Belize, they opted to deport him to the United States. On December 12, 2012, he is released from custody and put on a plane to Miami.
As he arrives back in the U.S., legally, he is clear of Belize for the moment, but his life is a shambles.
Total shambles.
He is socially radioactive, his reputation as a tech visionary is in tatters, and he is facing massive civil liability. In fact, skipping ahead slightly to close out the Belize chapter, in 2018, the Circuit Court in Orlando, Florida, refused to dismiss a wrongful death lawsuit against him filed by Gregory Falls' estate.
And did he fight it?
McAfee arrogantly refused to appear in court, lost the case by default, and was formally ordered to pay $25 million to Falls' family.
Wow. $25 million.
Yeah.
So he is back in America in the mid-2010s, financially drained compared to his peak, and carrying a massive amount of toxic baggage. How does a man with that specific psychological profile reinvent himself?
Good question.
He pivots to the two emerging arenas where chaotic, paranoid, anti-establishment energy is not just tolerated, but highly rewarded: fringe politics and cryptocurrency.
And he didn't just casually tweet about politics, he ran for the highest office in the land. On September 8, 2015, he officially announces his bid for the 2016 presidential election.
He really went for it.
Initially, he forms his own party, which he predictably calls the Cyber Party. But a few months later, on Christmas Eve 2015, he re-announces that he is instead seeking the nomination of the Libertarian Party.
And to be completely objective and impartial here, we should outline the facts of his political platform because it was a pure distillation of his personal worldview.
Okay, let's go through it impartially.
He advocated strongly for the decriminalization of cannabis and an absolute end to the war on drugs. He pushed for a strictly non-interventionist foreign policy, a free market economy with zero wealth redistribution, and the complete upholding of free trade.
Okay.
Reflecting his disdain for government overreach, he heavily supported abolishing the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA.
He was also incredibly vocal about religious liberty, taking the stance that business owners should be legally able to deny service to anyone if it contradicted their religious beliefs, arguing it was a fundamental matter of free choice to buy and sell without government force. And, unsurprisingly given his background, he advocated for vastly increased cyber awareness and robust national defense against cyber warfare.
He actually gained surprising traction within the party structure, running alongside established figures like Gary Johnson and Austin Peterson. He participated in the first nationally televised libertarian presidential debate in March 2016.
Who was his running mate?
His running mate was Judd Weiss, a commercial real estate broker and photographer. He ultimately came in second in the primaries and third at the 2016 Libertarian National Convention.
He even secured endorsements from notable figures in that political space, like activist Adam Kokesh and science fiction author L. Neil Smith.
Yeah, he had a real following.
He even ran again in 2020. But I have to ask you, was he a true libertarian ideologue, or was the political campaigning just a massive public shield?
A shield.
Yeah. If you are running for president, it makes it much easier to claim that any law enforcement investigation into your finances is just a politically motivated witch hunt. The campaigns almost feel like a smokescreen for his highly questionable business ventures during this exact same time.
It is highly probable that it was both. He used his 1990s tech genius reputation, combined with his new anti-establishment political megaphone, to lend an air of credibility to a series of ventures that capitalized on tracking and crypto.
For instance,
in May 2016, he becomes the chairman and CEO of a technology holding company called MGT Capital Investments.
Oh, right. They actually tried to rename the company John McAfee Global Technologies, but Intel, who owned his old company, threw a massive legal fit over the rights to the McAfee name in tech, so they had to abandon it.
But look at the actual technology he was developing at MGT. He pivots the company from social gaming into cybersecurity.
Full circle.
He declares publicly that Antivirus software is dead. It no longer works a direct shot at his old legacy. He brings in a technical team, and they develop two main products. One was called Sentinel, which was a hardware-based honeypot designed to trap network intruders.
But the other product, called eTagged, is where his deep, lifelong obsession with physical tracking and surveillance really shows its face.
Yeah.
I want to explain how eTagged worked because it is terrifying from a privacy standpoint.
Go ahead.
The device used passive ESID probe request monitoring to track the physical movement of mobile phones.
Let's break that down for people who don't know the tech.
Sure.
Every time you walk around with your smartphone, if your Wi-Fi is on, your phone is constantly screaming out into the void asking, are any of my known networks here?
Right.
It sends out a unique identifier called a mass address. eTagged was designed to quietly listen for those screams. By capturing your MASI address and matching the timestamp with CCTV camera footage, they could explicitly identify and track the physical movement of specific individuals walking through a space.
He was building the ultimate corporate surveillance tool. Perhaps it was his way to ensure he was never the one being tracked without knowing it. He wanted to be the one holding the radar.
That fits the profile perfectly.
And his promotional tactics for MGT were as chaotic and manipulative as ever. Soon after joining, he claimed his team had discovered a massive flaw in the Android architecture that allowed them to read encrypted WhatsApp messages.
Which would be a monumental cybersecurity breakthrough if it were true.
Was it?
Ismodo investigated the claim and found out the whole thing was entirely staged. McAfee had literally mailed the reporters brand new phones that his team had already pre-infected with malware to make the hack work.
Wow. Just lied.
When the journalist confronted him with the deception, he just brushed it off, pivoting the narrative to say the real story was how easily the malware could be installed in the first place.
It was pure smoke and mirrors, a complete manipulation of the truth. MGT eventually fell apart after the NYSE MKT refused to list the shares they needed for acquisitions.
So what did he do then?
McAfee stepped down as CDO in 2017 and left entirely in 2018 to focus solely on the unregulated Wild West of cryptocurrencies. And this is where the grift reaches its absolute zenith.
The crypto space in the late 2010s was perfectly suited for him. It was driven by anti-government sentiment, complex technology, and most importantly, hype.
Hype is his specialty.
His ability to generate market-moving hype via his massive Twitter following was incredibly lucrative. But it drew the attention of the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, who later filed a massive complaint against him.
What were the charges?
They alleged that McAfee and his bodyguard engaged in a highly illegal, fraudulent pump-and-dump scheme involving initial coin offerings, or ICOs.
Explain the mechanism of an ICO pump and dump for someone who isn't deep into crypto. How did he leverage his followers?
An ICO is like an IPO for a new cryptocurrency. The creators want people to buy the coin to drive up the price and increase liquidity. The SEC claimed that McAfee presented himself to his Twitter following as an impartial, expert investor who was rigorously evaluating these new coins and urging people to buy them because the technology was solid.
But he wasn't.
In reality, the SEC alleged he was being secretly paid massive sums of money by the coin creators to promote them. He would buy in cheap, tweet about it to cause a buying frenzy that pumped the price, and then dump his holdings for a massive profit, leaving his followers holding worthless digital bags.
That is just awful.
The SEC estimated he made $23 million in digital assets through this scheme.
He also made wild, market-moving predictions just to keep the chaotic momentum going. In July 2017, he tweeted a prediction that the price of one Bitcoin would jump to $500,000 within 3 years.
I remember that bet.
And to guarantee the media would cover it, he added, "If not, I will eat my own dick on national television." He later revised the prediction up to $1 million.
But by January 2020, after the market had shifted and the deadline approached, he simply tweeted that the entire bet was just a ruse to onboard new users, abruptly dismissing Bitcoin as an ancient technology.
So he just waved it off.
He felt absolutely zero obligation to the truth. His only loyalty was to the constant churning momentum of his own brand.
And as we mentioned earlier, he desperately needed the political shield because his stance on paying taxes was entirely militant. He contended that taxes were fundamentally illegal and a form of theft. He proudly claimed in 2019 that he had not filed a tax return since 2010.
He literally referred to himself publicly as a prime target of the Internal Revenue Service, and eventually that political shield failed. The real world caught up.
When did that happen?
In January 2019, McAfee takes to Twitter to announce he is, once again, on the run from the authorities. He claims that a grand jury has convened to indict him, his wife, and 4 of his campaign staff on tax evasion charges.
So he flees the United States, living internationally on a heavily armed boat, claiming he's hiding in international waters, or heading to Venezuela to advise them on cryptocurrency.
He even got arrested briefly in July 2019 in the Dominican Republic because local authorities found his yacht was loaded with high-caliber weapons and ammunition, though they released him after 4 days.
The walls are rapidly closing in at this point. His life has become a relentless, exhausting performance of evasion.
He's tweeting increasingly bizarre things.
Like what?
Like a completely false claim in August 2020 that he was arrested in Norway for wearing a lace thong over his face instead of a mandatory COVID mask. He even posted a photo of himself with a black eye to prove he fought the police.
Was that true?
No, internet sleuths immediately noticed the police officer in the background of the photo had the German word for police on his uniform. The Augsburg police in Germany later confirmed he tried to enter the country that day, but was turned away, not arrested for a thong.
It's just a constant, desperate stream of manufactured chaos to stay relevant. But the final act begins on October 5, 2020. John McAfee is arrested in Spain at the Barcelona airport.
It finally caught up to him.
The United States Department of Justice had officially requested his arrest for tax evasion. The indictment alleged he earned millions from 2014 to 2018 from his crypto pumps, speaking engagements, and even selling the documentary rights to his own life story, and failed to file a single tax return.
He is placed in a Spanish prison, pending a lengthy legal battle over extradition to the United States. And this is where the lifelong paranoia, the hypervigilance he developed as a child, reaches its tragic, almost inevitable culmination. Yeah. On June 23, 2021, the Spanish National Court officially authorizes his extradition to face charges in Tennessee. He was looking at spending the rest of his life in a federal cell.
Hours after that ruling came down, John McAfee is found dead in his prison cell.
The Catalan Justice Department stated that everything indicated he killed himself by hanging. An official autopsy confirmed suicide. A Spanish court also officially investigated and ruled it a suicide.
But with John McAfee, even death is not allowed to be a clean binary. His death instantly ignited a massive firestorm of speculation and internet conspiracy theories.
Literally.
And the most fascinating, and perhaps the saddest part, is that McAfee himself deliberately planted the seeds for these theories years in advance.
Exactly. He spent his entire life predicting that shadowy forces, cartels, governments, hackers were coming to assassinate him. Huh. In November 2019, while on the run, he posted a tweet that said, getting subtle messages from U.S. officials saying, in a fold, "We're coming for you, McAfee. We're going to kill yourself."
Wow.
He included a photo of a new tattoo on his right arm that simply read WHACKD, spelled WHACKD. He explicitly wrote, "If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked. Check my right arm."
By getting that tattoo and posting that tweet, he essentially crowdsourced his own afterlife conspiracy theory. He weaponized the internet's paranoia one last time.
And it worked. The internet exploded when he died. People immediately drew comparisons to the death of American financier Jeffrey Epstein, who was also found dead by hanging in his cell under high-profile circumstances.
His widow, Janice McAfee, fueled this fire heavily, didn't she?
She did. She stated publicly she did not believe he died by suicide, pointing out that he seemed hopeful about fighting the extradition. His lawyer told reporters he had seen no signs of suicidal intent in their previous conversations. She called for a thorough, independent investigation.
When did they finally return his body?
It wasn't until December 2023, over 2 years after his death, that his body was finally released from a morgue refrigerator in Barcelona to be returned to the U.S. for a funeral.
And we should briefly touch on his personal life here at the end, because it's just as chaotic and untethered as his professional one. We mentioned his early marriages, but the night after he was deported from Guatemala to Miami in 2012, the very first night he is back in the U.S. after escaping a murder investigation, he is solicited by a prostitute in South Beach named Janice Dyson. She is 30 years his junior.
They slept together, immediately began a relationship, and married in 2013. She later claimed in interviews that John saved her from violent human traffickers.
And during this deeply unstable period, he casually tweeted in December 2018 that he had, quote, 47 genetic children. In a Father's Day message, Janice described him as a father of many, loved by few.
It is entirely impossible to separate the man's truth from his self-aggrandizing fictions. And even after his physical death, the grift, the infection of the market, continued.
Right. In November 2023, Janice gave an interview saying John died without a will or an estate, leaving her broke and working odd jobs.
Mhm.
But then, in January 2025, John McAfee's official X account suddenly springs back to life.
It announced the launch of a new meme coin cryptocurrency and an AI chatbot entitled Antivirus. Janice, who controlled the account, insisted it wasn't hacked. She claimed she created the coin to honor John's legacy.
Did anyone buy it?
The internet immediately called it a blatant scam, a final attempt to drain liquidity from his followers. But within days, this meme coin hit a market capitalization of $37 million before the X account was finally suspended. The McAfee brand of chaotic, paranoid monetization literally outlived the man himself.
It has been a monumental deep dive into these documents today. And looking back at the entire arc, the summary is almost Shakespearean in its tragedy.
Yeah, it really is.
John McAfee built an absolute fortune by protecting the world from digital threats. He taught us how to build walls around our data, to scan for the unseen enemies. But he spent the remainder of his life completely unable to protect himself from his own internal viruses. The deep-seated childhood paranoia, the chemical addictions that rewired his brain, and an insatiable, self-destructive need to control the chaos by creating more of it.
Well said.
He's a pioneer, a fugitive, a provocateur, and ultimately a prisoner of his own mind long before he ever saw the inside of a Spanish cell.
And it leaves us with a lingering, provocative question to consider as we close this file. John McAfee made millions upon millions of dollars by convincing the world that the things we cannot see are actively out to destroy us. But looking at the entirety of his life, from the trauma of his childhood in Virginia to hiding in a sandbox in Belize, did he actually invent that paranoia just to sell us software? Or did he simply infect the rest of the world with the exact same terror he felt every single day of his life?
It makes you wonder. We started by talking about how nice it is when a diagnosis is clean, like an X-ray showing a broken bone, a simple binary, good or bad, safe or infected. But John McAfee's life proves that sometimes the fault lines run so deep and the systems are so complex that the X-ray is useless. The antivirus software can't save you when the threat was written into your own source code from the very beginning.